Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a film study look at Dante Fowler, who the Seattle Seahawks just signed for a one-year contract up to $5 million, I think an incentive-laden deal. I have mostly 2024 film to go off of as far as evaluating Fowler. He's more of a pass rush guy in my opinion. I really do like this signing for a lot of reasons. First of all, I want to relate it to the draft. What Seattle did and did not address in the draft. They went running back sooner than maybe some people might have expected at 32. I thought it was a perfect fit, a great choice. Jadarian Price, Bud Clark at safety at 64. Things could have gone another route or another way perhaps in a trade back scenario. Maybe you move back to 34, 36, 38 and recoup another third round pick where you can address safety and then go running back at 64. Essentially what I'm describing is a scenario where maybe they don't sign a Dante Fowler because they took a R. Mason Thomas or a Cassius Howe or even a Zion Young at pick 35 or 36 in a fictitious trade back scenario. They didn't go edge or outside linebacker at all in the draft, and I think it was a very underrated draft. Just talking about the first four guys: Price, Clark, Neal, and then Bo Stevens. Now you've got Dante Fowler. He's a very talented player. I had 2024 film already saved up, and what I mean is an unfinished project after the 2024 season. I never got to. I think I had about 30 plays of his saved up against the run or the pass. I want to display some of that here for you guys. He was in attack mode. Of course, he played for the Washington Commanders. That was the year that the Commanders made it to the 2024 NFC title game, right? And Fowler was a find, if you ask me, for me at least. I knew the name, I knew the player. He had been with the Rams and then the Cowboys for a couple of seasons. That's the connection with Aiden Durde. In 2024, he finished with 10.5 sacks. He had a pick six that I'll actually show you the film of here in a moment. I see a lot of similarities here, to be honest with you, between Fowler and then a bunch of veteran edge defenders that have been productive under Mike McDonald. And I'll talk about some of those names here in a couple of moments, but also DeMarcus Lawrence. The similarities are pretty eerie, if you ask me. I'll talk more about them a little bit later. Let's get to the film here finally, and I've got 10 plays queued up for you. I'll try to have some of the play information displayed. He's a finisher, if you ask me. He's a guy who sometimes I think, his hand placement isn't perfect. Maybe sometimes his pad level is a little high. The comparison that sticks out to me immediately, even though he's a little smaller in terms of stature, is Jadeveon Clowney, a guy who just plays with such great effort and energy that he kind of overwhelms blockers at times. But in any case, the left guard, left tackle here for the Browns, again, this is 2024 film. They're not coordinated, but part of that is because Fowler lined up on the interior. He gets through the B-gap quicker than most of these TE or ET stunts happen. Not only does he have alignment versatility, but I think a bigger issue or a bigger plus advantage to the signing is that he's got versatility of rush style. Interior, exterior, speed rush type guy. I would say he's got a whole bunch of B to B plus moves, if you ask me. This one, he's just through the gap before this tackle is even aware of the fact that it is a stunt. I'm talking about the defensive end or who lined up at defensive end, folding underneath. The guard, of course, picks it up, but Fowler's speed rushing on the interior is what makes this really impossible for the tackle to detect. I think he fits right in Seattle, I'll be honest with you. Just another guy in Wosu, DeMarcus Lawrence. Derek Hall is a slightly different player. I wouldn't put him in the category of as balanced and as experienced as those two guys. This is the game or the moment in 2024 where, I decided to gather some Dante Fowler film for the offseason. I'm always looking for offseason videos to do for, just Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks. But in any case, Washington had zero ability to cover that day. I'm talking about their outside corners and their safeties. But what they could do is play aggressive up front with Fowler, Bobby Wagner, who of course you guys are more than familiar with, and then Frankie Lavu, an extremely underrated hybrid inside linebacker, outside linebacker, number 4. In any case, Fowler had some great matchups against what at that time was a rookie right tackle in Roger Rosengarten. Baltimore had not started him to begin the year. And in this case, I like this play. I think this is what really gives me the Clowney vibes, that he can have a move that's not clean. It's not really working at a certain point, and then just overwhelms the guy with effort. He's able to bring down Lamar Jackson. Actually tackled Lamar, I think, 3 times in one game, which is, a very rare feat. He's not always the most technical guy. I would say he's got a swarming, high effort, high energy style that, again, I think fits perfectly in with the Seahawks. Granted, I'm showing you 2024 film here that I'd already saved up. It's what allowed me to get this out a little bit quicker. I'd like to do a follow-up, later on in the week, maybe Friday nights into Saturday morning, that focuses on 2025 film. Interestingly for me, since the signing has been announced, I've seen some people actually who rate his run defense higher than pass rush potential, which is backwards or inverse of what I see. He's a high energy guy, excuse me. I would expect to see him in the 30 to 35 snap per game range, where he can give maximum effort for 7 or 8 seconds at the time. In any case, this is actually going to give you 2 consecutive run defense plays, both of which are option. This is a weird scheme for the Ravens. 2 running backs in the backfield, Derrick Henry and Justice Hill, and they're both going to flow away from Dante Fowler. That's the blue line for Derrick Henry and the orange line as a lead blocker for Justice Hill. Both the defensive end and the defensive tackle are left unblocked for Washington. It appears almost kind of like what I would refer to as midline, where you leave a defensive tackle unblocked. Normally it's a 3 technique. We're focusing on Fowler here. Watch him surf down, feather, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it half man. There's different phrases or different reasons to describe it as such. But in any case, you've got the tight end, Isaiah Likely, illustrated by this yellow line, looping out in front. I don't really think this is a dual read concept. Basically, I think Dante Fowler is adaptable, not just because of his versatility in alignment and rush style, but I think he's really able to adapt during the play to what's happening in front of him. He's perfectly square, right? Very similar, I think, fits right in with DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu, experienced veteran guys who they can play fundamental against the run when need be, but when they're in attack mode, they can do so. Essentially, guys who can change their approach, and that's something that I've tried to explain to non-Seahawks fans a bunch in 2025, and then since the season is over, that Seattle's defensive line, the way they approach things could kind of change or morph. You really saw it in the first game, regular season game against the Rams, the loss on the road when Sam Darnold threw, I think, 4 interceptions. Basically, defensive line getting upfield and in attack mode early, and then eventually switching to a more almost head-up alignment and just reading their blocks and their keys. That's what Dante Fowler can do. Not necessarily a shutdown run defender. In fact, I've already told you, I think he's way better as a pass rusher than he is against the run. He's got 58.5 career sacks, 10.5 sacks in this season 2024 that I'm showing you film of here. Another option play here, albeit one of a slightly different variety. This time there's only one running back on the field. Is Justice Hill, and Fowler has the tight end to his side. This is what I would refer to as an arc release. Focus on the tight end release. I'll have it diagrammed or illustrated for you here in a moment. But the idea here is that the tight end can be eye candy, perhaps, for an edge defender, because he releases to the outside at the same time that the tackle is stepping down, presumably to down block or combo up to the second level. Fowler is, if you ask me, very active and aggressive when need be, but also super smart. I think that's why I say already, I think he belongs with this Seattle team. I really also like Frankie Lavu, who doesn't really play a role or a factor in this play at all. He actually gets blocked by Daniel Falele, the Ravens right guard that is thankfully gone. But in any case, Fowler steps down, stays square, and you can see he actually kind of extends the inside arm, widens his arms up, such that he can react this way if he wants to, or that way if Lamar keeps it. The running back actually kind of bends it back towards Fowler because the defensive tackle, 94, is able to get in between the guard and the tackle for a moment, and that's what causes or gives Justice Hill impetus to bring this back off of the tackle's block, Rosengarten's block, and that shortens the distance for Fowler to close down. Athletic player who I think can switch modes depending on the situation. Not going to need to play a high number of snaps. Of course, there's a lot of guys on this defensive line who can play the edge defender position or who can move from one spot to the other. The depth that's been created, I think, is smart. But what I do want to talk about for a moment before we get back to the plays is a pattern of energized or maybe re-energized veteran edge defenders that emerge or re-emerge perhaps under Mike McDonald. So I'm going to do this in reverse order, right? DeMarcus Lawrence comes to Seattle last year. He had 3 sacks in 2024. I think he had 4 in 2023. And of course, he came to Seattle last year and played spectacular. Didn't lead the team in sacks. In fact, Uchenna Nwosu and Byron Murphy were tied with 7. But the season before that, right? Leonard Williams, his second double-digit sack performance in his career was 2024 in Seattle, if memory serves. But even backtracking a little bit more than that, Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney in 2023 each reached either career high or double-digit sacks for the second time in their career. Prior to that, 2022, Justin Houston in Mike McDonald's first year, Justin Houston had 9.5 sacks, pretty much his last hurrah as far as high-level pass rush output. Backtracking even more than that to McDonald's 1 year spent at Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson enters 2021, I believe, with 4 career sacks and finishes up with, I think, 14.5, 15 or something like that in his final year at Michigan. My point is there is a pattern, if you ask me, a lineage of edge defenders in a McDonald's system being more effective than they were the season or 2 or 3 seasons before that. I could honestly see the same type of pattern holding for Dante Fowler. He's a high effort, high energy guy, gives great output from the time the ball is snapped until the time the whistle is blown. And this will be a play that I kind of used to illustrate and finalize that point. He had a number of reps against Roger Rosengarten, like I said, who was a rookie at that point in time. And Rosengarten kind of learned here a little bit from some stuff that happened earlier in the game. So watch him chop down. This isn't really a snatch trap, but functionally it's the same result. Fowler actually got his hands to the inside first, and then Rosengarten is able to counter and then basically knock Fowler to the ground. And Lamar Jackson with 1 defender on the ground, 3 defensive linemen, bigger type, slower guys who are still on the ground, normally are still on their feet, and able to react. Lamar Jackson, look, I've seen this 100 times, or probably 300 times, in fact. He escapes these situations, but Fowler is tough. Fowler's on the ground right here with Rosengarten on top of him, and he's going to promptly get up and then record his second sack of the day. Again, tackled Lamar Jackson, I think, 3 times on the day. I have, no idea how many times that's occurred. I just know that watching the game that day as a Ravens fan, I was like, wow, Dante Fowler, first of all, he's very aggressive and assertive, and he had a ton of impact. I could see him in Seattle. I think if he still retains the athleticism that's seen here, right? I could see him being quiet for 3 or 4 weeks. Not much output because he's not a high tackle guy. And then suddenly having 2 sacks and a forced fumble in a game because he's a finisher and he's just a guy who knows how to make plays when coming downhill. This is a truly unreal play. Seems kind of random if you ask me, but I think Fowler does something perhaps a little bit underrated. Ball ends up in his hands. Andy Dalton, some could say, throws it directly to him. This is his only career interception. I do have to add, he does have 15 career forced fumbles. In any case, it's a screen to his side. Normally, you're going to get the tackle to the screen side, pass setting, and what he's trying to do, he's trying to draw or elicit an actual pass rush move from that edge rusher. In this case, it's Dante Fowler. And then the center and the right guard are going to work out. They're going to try and screen under him or on the other side of him, however you want to describe it. In any case, he has great recognition, if you ask me. He's stopped in his tracks here for some reason, and I'll let this kind of flow through. You can see him immediately stop, put his right foot in the ground, talking about his right foot being in the ground here, and then he'll veer off in this direction because that's where the running back is going. I don't think he has the running back man here. The running back is on the opposite side of him pre-snap. I think he just recognizes that there's some type of screen or something unusual happening. No idea how. Again, I had this play saved from 2024. This is the week after they came to Baltimore and lost 30-23 when he had the 2 sacks. And you can see how this works out here as far as Dalton trying to throw it to the running back. The running back had to turn around, so not a part of the design of the play. and then it ends up in Fowler's hands. Like I said, he's a finisher, a playmaker, an impact guy. Do I expect him to, 10 sacks, 11 sacks? No. But I could certainly see him having 6 or 7, the same way that Uchenna Nwosu, DeMarcus Lawrence did here. As an aside, this play is really reminiscent of DeMarcus Lawrence's 2 touchdowns against Arizona in Week 10 last year. Actually, I guess I shouldn't say reminiscent, because chronologically, this play action actually happened first, right? This is from Week 7 of 2024. In addition, as far as the Lawrence similarities go, it's very eerie, if you ask me. They both played for Aiden Durde for a couple of years in Dallas. Not only that, they each had 3 sacks the year before coming to Seattle as a free agent. Lawrence's contract, different one, obviously, than Dante Fowler. 1 year, up to $5 million deal that I think just makes perfect sense for Seattle right now. This will be a great play on a 4th and 1 from that same game against Carolina. Week 7 of 2024. Like I said, in the film that I've gathered, he's a better pass rush guy versus the run. I'm not saying that the effort isn't there. That's just my observations. I don't have any metrics, or I don't rely on those things anyway. I just watch the film and tell you guys what I think. In my opinion, I would expect to see him in on pass rush downs more so than anything. This is a 4th down, and you're basically getting a down block by the tackle and the guard. I call it dive option. It's really not an option play. The quarterback isn't reading this. What makes it difficult for Carolina to block is that Fowler is outside shade of the tight end right now, and then he'll step into the C gap. And so now the tight end's job is radically different. He's got to step down and try to block Fowler. Well, he can't move, obviously, until the ball is snapped. Fowler can. Seattle relies on these types of plays, if you ask me, in short yardage situations. I'm not saying that I wouldn't see him on the field. Don't foresee him on the field at all in 3rd and 1 or 2nd and 2 or even 1st and 10. I just think that based on the film that I have and my perceptions of Dante Fowler over the years, but specifically this 2024 film, I would expect him to have more juice and more in the tank, if you will, for those obvious pass rushing plays. Kind of an example of that from that same game against Carolina, Week 7, 2024. I like the group a whole lot from a depth standpoint. Nwosu, Lawrence, Derek Hall, Dante Fowler. There's some other guys around there. O'Toole, Jared Ivey, who'll be a second-year player from the SEC. This is a Seattle scheme, if you ask me, where you've got one hard-coded outside edge rush, and then some type of game either being played by the defensive tackle and DN from the other side, or edge defender, or between the 2 defensive tackles. That last explanation, or that last part of that, is not what's occurring here. This is a Seattle scheme, if you ask me, from the standpoint of 4-man rush, something else happening on the other side. You're either trying to flush the quarterback into the stunt, or the stunt is trying to flush the quarterback into the hard-coded outside rush. Got great pursuit. You're going to get a sack here. Like I said, if he retains this, I know it's Andy Dalton that he's chasing down, but if he retains this type of athleticism in the same month, he obviously tackled Lamar Jackson 3 times. Like I said, I'll have a second video out at some point, hopefully before the weekend, with a 2025 film study focus. Got 2 more plays here. This is against the Steelers from Week 10. Again, the play style, the pathways to sacks, the energy level, the energy output, and sometimes the misplacement of the hands. It all reminds me of Jadeveon Clowney. This is a somewhat irregular move. The tight end recognizes that Fowler is lined up to the inside, and so he's going to kind of block down on Fowler, and that's going to push Fowler on this path. I don't know if this is predetermined or pre-planned, or if this is just a reaction. But what I do know is I would not want to dissuade someone like a Fowler or a DeMarcus Lawrence from adjusting during this, if in fact this is a mid-play adjustment. Basically, you would want someone with this type of talent and athleticism to play aggressive and not second-guess them, is what I'm trying to say. I think he's a great fit for the price. $5 million at most. Look, if he gets to $5 million, fantastic, right? That means he was on the field often, and he got to a certain number of sacks, a certain number of snaps played over the course of the season. As far as the depth piece, man, I love what they've done as far as cheap options here with Dante Fowler. Cheap, $5 million or less. Of course, it makes it pretty clear that Seattle will either have to go edge defender in the 2027 draft or possibly trade for one before the deadline in the 2026 season. One more play that I think just, illustrates or gives you some more evidence of what you can expect as far as his effort level and his range. In this case, in addition to that, it's recognition. There's a very abnormal path here to get to the running back. It's a zone run concept away from him. And again, I think he just adapts really well during the play. So Frankie Lavu, the inside linebacker, is going to go on this blitz path to the outside, and that's going to elicit, I think, a unexpected reaction from the Steelers' offensive line, essentially the right guard and the right tackle. We've got a great view of Fowler's path here from the all-22 angle. So as we let it flow, you'll see Lavu ends up going upfield, and Fowler just immediately folds underneath. Perhaps that's the design of it, but then, again, this is very Seattle-esque, and I don't really want to compare the 2024 Commanders defense in any way, shape, or form to what Mike McDonald and Aiden Durde have put forth in Seattle. But what I'm talking about is these irregular type of pathways to either a sack, like the stunt you saw, or the loop around, that Fowler just had to sack Russell Wilson, or this kind of folding across to finish in a violent manner. He plays downhill, plays very aggressively. He's an efficient mover. His strikes they're quick, but they're not necessarily the most technical at times, but he just overwhelms people. I would say he's a swarmer. To use a combat sports analogy, I'm not a huge fan of this guy historically because of some of the things he did, but he reminds me a little bit of like Antonio Margarito, a guy who just throws so many punches, or a Marcus Maidana, somebody who throws so many punches, and some of them come from weird angles, and it just all seems to work. We just finished the draft season and tried to make a bunch of player comps for college players. And so I'm still kind of in that mode. I like the Clowney comparison. The difference is Clowney's 6'5". Coming out of college, Clowney might have been a little bit bigger, but Fowler's not small. He's 6'3", 264. He's got plenty of size with him. Why didn't he produce like this, like the video that I'm showing you, the film I'm showing you? Why didn't he produce like this in Dallas last year? First, they did have a lot of depth there. And second, that influenced or impacted his snap count. It was very inconsistent, but here's who was, in Dallas from an edge defender standpoint at various points in 2025. Of course, Jadeveon Clowney ended up in Dallas in 2025. James Houston IV, who was with Detroit and had a spectacular rookie year of 2022, actually kind of resurrected his career a little bit in Dallas. I think he had 5 or 5.5 sacks. Dante Fowler, who only had 3 sacks, who we're focusing on here, and then Ezeraku, the rookie edge rusher from Boston College. I don't think that Fowler's ever been a high tackle guy. 30 snaps a game last year, 2025, from weeks 1 to 5. He only had 1 sack. I will say this, his week 5 game, was explosive. I've actually already watched the film. I just wanted to do a standalone video on it. Week 5 against the Giants, 2025. 1 sack, 5 quarterback hits, 1 PD, an extremely violent pass rush rep that I can't wait to show you. Like I said, I actually already have the film. 2 other games from 2025 that I will focus on in my follow-up video. Detroit in week 13. His last 4 games of the year, he only played a total of 61 snaps. It makes sense. Clowney got going. I think he had a really underrated season in Dallas. And then Ezeraku, the rookie, kind of got acclimated as well. So I have the Giants film, the Lions film, and then a game against Kansas City in week 13 that the Dallas actually figured out a way to win, I think 31-28. So my follow-up video, hopefully, Friday night, maybe into Saturday morning. The reality is Fowler's probably not going to get a ton of snaps in Seattle. Right? Expect him to be a pass rush guy, but in the event of an injury, I think that's the hidden genius of this signing. In the event of injury to Lawrence and Wosu or Hall, you have a guy here who could immediately be plugged in, and he could play 40, 45 snaps. He's looking for that opportunity, right? I think it's smart for Fowler, from his perspective, to sign with a Mike McDonald defense. Those guys, those older edge rushers, Justin Houston, JPP, who came to Baltimore in 2022, Kyle Van Noy, Jadeveon Clowney, although both of those guys signed late. At this point in time, the pattern is very real, in my opinion, that I talked about earlier. And I really like this group. I know not all of them are, quote, edge defenders. Leonard Williams and Riley Mills, both more D tackle, DN type in a 3-4 structure, but it's a base nickel defense. So there will be some times where Williams and or Mills are the edge defender. Lawrence and Wosu, Hall, Fowler, Leonard Williams, Riley Mills, Connor O'Toole, and Jared Ivey, obviously going to be fighting for time. I like that group a whole lot. I recognize that things could have been different in the draft. Could have ended up with a guy like an R. Mason Thomas, a Zion Young, a Cassius Howell for, a DPR designated pass rusher. I really like Fowler's film from 2024. The game against the Giants in week 5 of 2025 looks the same to me. But the stats, the production, overall clearly were different in Dallas in 2025. I trust Seattle's front office to make the evaluation, and their coaches, to decide whether they like a guy's film or not that's most recently put out there last season in Dallas. In any case, you guys let me know what you think of the video, what you think of Fowler in general, but also the plays that I used to try to illustrate my points about how aggressive he is. He has a swarming style, if you ask me, that's perhaps not always technical, but can be effective. Not ever really going to be a high tackle guy. We wouldn't look for that to happen in 2026 in Seattle, but he's a guy who can make splash plays in the right situations. Appreciate you guys' time.